Yeah, wouldn't ends. We back with another one for the youths in them. Yeah, young, brilliant minds, future in sight. Got the power to make change, make the world ignite. Let nobody say you can't achieve. Your dreams are seeds, sow and just watch them grow. But you gotta believe in the youth effect. We're raising up the youth effect. Can't hold us down. The youth effect, we breaking ground. The youth effect, they gonna hear us roar. Educate, we get the key, unlock the potential. A lesson every day, knowledge essential. Standing tall, walking proud, let your voice be heard. Unite together as one, spread the love with every word. The youth effect, we're raising up. The youth effect, can't hold us down. The youth effect, we breaking ground. The youth effect, they gonna hear us roar. Educate, we get the key, unlock the potential. A lesson every day, knowledge essential. Standing tall, walking proud, let your voice be heard. Unite together as one, spread the love with every word. The youth effect, we're raising up. The youth effect, can't hold us down. The youth effect, we breaking ground. The youth effect, they gonna hear us roar. Create, initiate, push through, no limits. Go ahead and live it up. Respect, positivity, you on your way. Break down walls, build bridges. Yeah, the youth effect, we're raising up. The youth effect, can't hold us down. The youth effect, we breaking ground. The youth effect, they gonna hear us roar. Never forget your home, but look at where you're going. Keep that passion growing. Youth the heartbeat of a world in motion. So rise up, speak out, start the revolution. The youth effect, we're raising up. The youth effect, can't hold us down. The youth effect, we breaking ground. The youth effect, they gonna hear us roar. The youth effect, we're raising up. The youth effect, can't hold us down. The youth effect, we breaking ground. The youth effect, they gonna hear us roar.
Hello, it's another Monday night with the Youth Effect. I am Kathy Robinson and I welcome you again. I hope you had a wonderful, wonderful weekend. And you may be looking at us on TDN Network 1, on YouTube, on Instagram, on VStream, on Roku, and as well on Facebook. TDN Media, okay? TDN Radio Caribbean. So you can get us all of those things. And don't forget, I should say, remember to subscribe as well to all the channels. So Facebook page, Instagram, YouTube. And you can also send your feedback or whatever else you will, comments to the Youth Effect 767 at gmail.com. All saying all of that, we are going to have a very good show for you tonight. I'm going to ask you to be very interactive because I want to hear your voice. Today, we're going to reflect on the past couple episodes that we've had and get your feedback, as well as do an assessment with the attitudes of a shifting global culture and where am I? Where am I? I said, where am I? Not only me, but you. All of us do our own internal reflection as to how do we really look at the youth or consider the youth in terms of mental health. The things we've discussed for the past couple of weeks, we've spoken about youth in the digital space. We've spoken about mental health of youth. We've also spoken about inheriting our culture, passing our culture down to the next generation. Yeah. And going forward, we're also going to be looking at young people in business, in politics. We spoke with a young gentleman last week when he spoke to how young people looked at the US elections. Now, I know some of you left when he was talking about Trump. Let me tell you something, I don't like Trump either. But it's a matter of tolerance in terms of understanding what the young people think. This is the focus of the Youth Effect in understanding. We want to shift away from intolerance of the young people, of the indignation we feel with young people, and understand where they're at. And in terms of good communication, this is what we are advocating. By understanding people, even our own personal relationships and our daily relationships at home, as well as at work, when we understand how people think, then we can create a harmonious living space, as well as create strategies on how to go forward. We can always agree to disagree. Nothing wrong with agreeing to disagree. But understanding somebody else's perspective and developing a level of tolerance doesn't mean that we have to succumb to their thinking, but understanding how they think. So for me, I don't like Trump, but that is the government of the day where I live. And one of the things that I have made a concerted effort, uh, a mandate for myself, is to get more political savvy, because I wouldn't understand what he's doing if I do not understand the policies. I cannot speak to or against the policies if I do not understand the legalities or the technicalities or how it's going to affect me. I cannot shut it off. Whether we live in England, Dominica, Africa, America, wherever we live, we should develop a level of tolerance that we can. Okay, sometimes the political environment goes way beyond intolerance. Okay, very toxic. But you dictate where your boundaries are, and even the religious environment as well. You dictate where your boundaries are, but get to know the policies that affect you. And during the election and stuff, I just could have, I don't want to hear Trump. And I just stopped listening to everything that was going on because it was getting me so upset. But now that things have advanced the way that it has, and understanding the point of view of the young people. Only in understanding the point of view, now we can know what the strategy is to develop, to know to get back into the fold, to understand, and now to get them to have a mind shift set, a paradigm shift in their thinking, or even understand them and get them onto our platforms, get them onto our sites. You know what I mean? This is what the youth effect is all about. Youth effect, how we ripple on and impact each other. Tonight, we do not have a youth guest, but we're going to be speaking to our own Sam George in terms of how attitudes, our attitudes, and what is do we define as a global culture? Is there anything as a global culture? And where is the shift from where it was before to where it is now in terms of understanding and placing the young people for us to be able to bridge that generational gap and have good work relations, good family relations, good playground relations, digital, because right now it's a digital space. How do we do it? Remember, we need your feedback. Send us a chat, send us a message. We will engage you. So please engage us. This is not a one-man show. It's all of us to make it right. The Youth Effect, a conduit to advocating for the youth, with the youth, and by the youth. So all of us can live together and create a much better world for the generations that's coming. So I'm going to welcome Mr. Sam George now. Mr. George, where are you?
I am right here with you, Kathy.
Hey, how are you doing? How was your weekend?
The weekend was good. It was good.
Great
Let's
stuff.
put it
Great
that way.
stuff.
I did quite a few things. You know, my wife and I hung out all weekend. Put it that way.
Hey, look at the young people.
Yeah, yeah, man. I hear you say you don't have a youth, but I don't know your business. You know, as far as I'm concerned,
You
I'm a
are a
youth.
youth. I agree. I
You
agree.
know,
So, what do you
even
think
if
of culture when we talk about shift? First, we're gonna define what we mean by a global culture. What do you think about that?
I think we could probably assign several different definitions to the term global culture because I
Mm-hmm.
mean it can be political, which might err on the side of being a little dangerous in some
Right.
cases. It can
Mm-hmm.
be religious, it can be
Mm-hmm.
religion, it can be um, musical or entertainment arts. So I don't think there is one specific definition you can put to it. So I guess it
But
in this case everything is
don't you think
context.
all of this merge to create a culture, whether it's a religious aspect, political aspect, lifestyle, or stuff like that, aren't all this together?
I don't necessarily think, I'm not a sociologist, but just in my own thinking, I don't think
Of
it can
course.
really merge. What I think can happen is it can have friction, or it will be like oil and water. Everything mixes together, or else tries to mix together, but repels one another,
Mhm.
creating conflict and creating uh, further issues like we have in the world today. You see people fighting over religion, people fighting over politics, left versus right, and all of that stuff. So I think that's what it creates, and maybe that in and of itself is a culture as well.
Yeah,
you know?
because I believe as well, for me, that religion influences culture. Because if we even look at biblical times, a
Mm,
lot of what they do, lifestyle, because culture is about lifestyle, right? What you eat, your norms and things like that
yeah.
comes
Well, to
off
an
those
extent,
course to an
culture. That's
extent.
that's a
And
that's
sometimes
one
the
aspect of culture.
political
I think.
structure comes off of that as
Sorry, I
well.
didn't mean to cut you off. Yeah.
That's okay.
What I was gonna say is, I think the word culture should actually have a broader meaning than we give it. I think it
Okay.
has it's a global. It should have a global meaning, and everything should fit under culture, because, like you say, culture can be your music, dancing. It could be um, it could be your society where everybody in your society smokes, or whatever the case may be. That's maybe
Mhm.
not a good example, but just whatever it is you're doing as a people within your own locality, or within your own locality, whether your locality is your village, your city, or your town, or your country, whatever it is you are doing as a people, whatever
Mhm.
defines you, and people look at you and they say, oh, this is a Dominican, for example.
Right.
That's your culture. That the culture
Mhm.
defines you. And that
Mhm.
can be your politics, the way you
Yes.
do politics. That can be the way you do your religion, or whichever religion is dominant
Right.
in your society.
Mhm.
But I think you are right in the sense that all of these things come together to form a culture, but they may not necessarily agree or work well together.
Yes, that's a good point. I totally
Mhm.
agree with that because within the culture itself, the religious aspects could be diverse, just as you said, conflicting with each other.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there is a baseline or foundation which should create the mold, I should say,
Mhm.
and all the extra is toppings.
I don't know if it's toppings or underneath or what, but I just think that a lot of times, s- some cultures, I think we sort of take them personal. Some of the things we do, and like things like religion and politics, we take those things personal in some cases, some people, and that can create friction within your society that you could just avoid if you just respect someone else's choice or opinion. And I think a lot of times this is what creates some of the problems we have that are frankly unnecessary.
Mm-hmm.
If But obviously that's wishful thinking, right? That everybody's
Yes.
just going to respect you or respect your opinion. But learning to deal with those issues where it doesn't turn into something outrageous is a way to build a better society. I mean, I'm sure everyone wants a better society, right?
But
At least I
how,
hope
if we're
so.
coming down to the grassroots of it, if we're talking about the putting the youth in focus, yeah,
Hmm.
how tolerant are we of the new shifting culture that the youth are now engaged with?
I think one of the things we've done as the older ones, or as the previous generation, is we've given the youth a sort of, or not given them, rather, I think is a better way. We've not given them a foundation to continue in some cases, or to build from. Instead, we've scared them. you
Explain.
know
Expound on that.
Well, I'm sure you've heard the term globalization,
Mm.
right? So, in terms of politics, politicians have been preaching, especially in North America. I haven't really heard it so much with our Caribbean politicians, but North American politicians always talking about globalization and they want to take over the world and blah blah blah, right? Like they haven't already done it. They just don't want the other side
Yes,
to have a chance.
to have
They
a
just want
chance.
their
Right,
side, and
right, right.
everyone knows who it is I'm talking about. They can figure that out themselves. But in
Yeah,
general terms, but we've sort of scared the youth. We've told them, well, this person wants to control you, you know, but we haven't told them why. Why are they trying to control you? Or we've told them, oh, don't be a part, don't what we call it, group think. That used to be a term at one point,
yes, yes.
but we've not told them. Well, we've not taught them how to think as individuals. One of the things I think we've lost especially in our education system, is teaching our young people critical thinking skills.
Critical thinking, very much so.
We lost
Yes.
civic lessons, and we
Mm-hmm.
lost critical thinking skills. And I think those two things are extremely important to run a successful society, to
Yes.
run a country.
Mm-hmm.
I know some politicians like their voters dumb. Some of them might admit
It
it.
works. Yes,
Because
it
it
is.
works. Because they'll just come vote for you and they'll just say what you
Exactly.
believe what you say.
Exactly.
But while that may be good for one politician to fill his pockets or do whatever it is he wants to do, it's a detriment to your society, to your nation. To me, that makes you unpatriotic.
Yes, it can be. It can be, but in the terms of politics, it's all about self-power and ego and everything else like that.
Yeah.
Not really. Sometimes we think that politicians are really interested in development of our country, and sometimes it's just plainly about themselves. You
It
know.
takes very selfless people to
Mm.
go into politics to help build their society. Very selfless.
But
But the
at this,
thing is,
Mhm.
very selfless people, the people who have truly good intentions, rarely win.
That's
And
right.
when they do win, they don't have the support
Right.
from the government apparatus to effect some of the change that they are
Changes
hoping
that
for,
we hoping for.
or they're hoping to do, because again, it goes back to scaring people into telling them, well, they're just trying to control you and every other negative thing they can think of.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we have a whole generation of people just who don't know how to think for themselves, who don't know how to think critically, who don't know how to look at
Analyze.
potential leaders and
Yes.
analyze when people speak. Me, if I'm saying something, don't take my word for it. Go look it
Go
up
look it
yourself.
up, yes. But coming back to the globalization point that you made, um, another term they use is the global village because there's
Mhm.
such interconnectedness and cultural exchange. Look at TikTok, for example.
Yeah,
You open and you see so many different cultures and people putting up their own things and new words being formed by probably just one TikToker, quote unquote, being an influencer, quote unquote, and they use a term and all of a sudden becomes the lingo for the young people. It becomes
yeah.
a new term. Um, and then all of that now is enhanced to the digital revolution and
Which is something I love. I mean, I love technology. I work
mhm,
in the field, so I love technology. I was telling someone earlier, I'm here for all of it.
right.
I mean, the previous two generations built the computer and released it to us, but now this generation is coming with a not necessarily new, but they are improving on the technology that has
Yes,
existed for the last 100 years.
right.
But they are also going to make it so large, so big, so almost even technology will become almost even tangible
Yes, and
because
that
of
is
where
this. Sorry.
because of where AI is going and where, just everything. It will
Mm-hmm.
make the the technology the technological revolution of the past decades
Look like
look like
nothing.
child's play.
Yes.
Look like we were playing in a sandbox.
And for us to catch up, for us to really now be integrated, and maybe we will never be on pace with the younger generation, we need to find some way to measure and keep pace. We need to force ourselves to understand. A lot of people say, I do not like AI. Have you done your research as to what AI can do? It has its bad points. Everything has its bad
Yeah,
points,
and that has always been
Everything
my point.
can kill
That
society. But then, how can you use it to develop a better quality of life? I
yeah,
love my AI
yeah. I think
assistant.
one of the things I think that has happened is that you remember when computers were basically taking over the desktop computer. I should say, I shouldn't say computer because computers have been
Yes,
around for
laptops,
the
yeah,
last 200 years. But like desktop computers, almost
mhm,
anyone can have a computer in their home,
right,
basically replacing the typewriter and
mm-hmm,
the fax machine with emails.
right.
You remember there were a generation of people who refused to learn computers,
Computers, yes.
right? Especially in the Caribbean,
Mm-hmm.
or people who spoke Patois would say, "Moi, mali a rien pour faire un computer," right?
Or when the cell phone came, a lot of them say, I don't want cell phone. I have my phone at my home. If somebody wants
Exactly.
me, they'll
Yeah,
call me on my
exactly.
landline. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is the kind of thing that happens or has happened in the past. So we do not want to remain in that mindset
Mm-hmm.
where our young people are advancing so far ahead. But so my point was that by the time some of us, some of these people wanted to learn computers and catch up, it was too late.
Mm-hmm.
Their
They're
children were so far ahead of
ahead
them
of them. Yeah.
that their children could be communicating with strangers online, doing all kinds of things on the computer, and they have
Mm-hmm.
no idea what their children
What's
are doing.
going on? And by that time now, it has become intimidating, and they do not want to learn again.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So this is where we don't want to repeat that same error. We don't want to
Right.
repeat that. We want to be in a space where when the technology leaps forward, we are right
Mm-hmm.
there. And not only to monitor our children, obviously not, but also to improve
Yes.
our own
Monitor
lives.
themselves.
Yeah, no, I'm saying not only to. Oh,
Let's
we
be
definitely
direct
have to
about
monitor.
it.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah,
But
I mean,
monitor in a way to guide.
yeah, yeah. Not to oppress them or
Right.
control them.
Monitor in a way to
Although
guide.
at some point, I
Yes.
mean, our youngest did not get a cell phone until he was a certain age, and he
Hmm.
did not get I call it
Social media.
social media until he graduated from high school.
Hmm.
So, and he understood, even maybe if he didn't have it, he understood
Why?
that it exists,
Hmm.
and he understood why he is not allowed.
Right. And
Right?
to interject here, this is such a foundational part of development of our young people, teaching them, not teaching them, helping them to understand why. There should always be a why, because in the absence of you, they have to make their own decisions.
Yeah.
And they're going to make a decision based on their understanding of the why,
Why
that they
exactly?
can relate to other issues
Hmm.
that come up when you are not there, because we're not going to be there with them all the time.
Well, exactly. I mean, our youngest is in college and he's on his own. He has certain decisions to make. Every morning,
Hmm.
he has to make the decision to wake up, get up, and
Hmm.
go to class
Right.
or go to work, whichever one comes first.
Hmm.
So, they have to understand why it is. We can't be the generation who, you remember some parent back in the day, our parents would say, tell you do something or not do something, and you'd say why. They would say because I
Right.
said so.
Right.
That didn't really work, you know. Or maybe it worked for some of us because we understood what they meant.
Hmm.
But these kids these days, you can't simply tell them do this or not do that because I told you or because I said so. It doesn't.
It
It's
doesn't
not going to
resonate.
fly. They're not
Right.
going to accept that.
Right.
And it's not because you're a bad parent. It's just the
Mhm.
way how society progresses.
Right.
Things change, although they stay the same. They still
Hmm.
change.
Yes.
So it's we have to be. I think we have to know, or at least have a basic understanding of what's really happening in the society, what's happening around us, so we can guide our children accordingly.
But we have to put ourselves in that space to learn it
Yeah,
and to know it and to
yeah,
find the information, because the information is there. But again, to some people, we may not know where to look for it or where to find it. And you can always come to the Youth Effect every Monday night and find some of that information.
most
Yes,
definitely. You can always come to
5:30.
TDN Network in general. We always
Yes,
have good information. So certainly, this is the right place to
yes,
learn things you never, or even realize things you never thought of before.
right.
You never observed before.
Help us to
You
raise
know,
our tolerance level or understanding. Um, and we live in a society where so many different perceptions and opinions, and as we say, we're talking about a global cultural mix, and
Mhm.
we have to learn tolerance.
Definitely. Well, I think what we really have to learn as well is, especially when it comes to the youth,
Yes,
you say tolerance, but I also believe, you know, let me use the word for a little bit. As the word of God tells children, obey your parents or honor your mother and father so that your days on the earth will be lengthened or
lessons.
extended, something to that
Hmm.
effect.
Hmm.
But as the Bible, there's always two sides to what it
Right.
is talking about. It
Hmm.
also says fathers, well, it says fathers, but it really means parents. Do
Parents
not provoke your children to
provoke
wrath.
your children to wrath, right? And they
And
forget that.
I was discussing that earlier with my cousin who also hosts a program on TDN Network. But so he was gonna use it as a topic. But the thing is, we often forget that. Or many of us forget that.
Hmm.
Now, what is wrath? Wrath is an extreme reaction
Hmm.
to anger.
Right.
So it's telling us don't push our children so far that they
Hmm.
do something that is just not just out of character or just outrageous. So everything in life, there's always two sides, and
Yes.
we can't tell our children, um, or we can't just tell them well anymore. We can't just say, don't do this, don't do that, do as I say, yell at them sometimes for the simplest things, or hit them, or we can't do these things anymore. And it's not about worrying about what society thinks or telling you how to raise your children.
Hmm.
No, it's saying that if you constantly berate your children, you use negative reinforcement. You constantly call them names, negative
Hmm.
names, or you tell them, oh, how you stupid, you this, you that, or you we just and we know there are parents who did that to their children.
And they believe that. After a while, they're
They
going to
grow up
believe that,
believing that
and then
they're
they're going to live that experience out.
exactly, exactly, and
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 then they actually fulfill, because words have power. That's a
most
prophetic word.
definitely. The
You
power
know,
and
we
love, life, and
prophesy
death
of
is
the
in the
children in
tongue.
those things. Yes.
Yeah. So if you tell your children things like, "Oh, you'll amount to nothing," or "You are nothing," or "You are this," you are that, it just and so I know for me personally, I like to learn from other people's examples.
Mm-hmm.
So if I or when I was growing up, I observed people around me and some of the things that are happening, and I decide, you know what, this is not something I want to do.
Mm-hmm.
Or this is not the way I would talk to my children or I would deal with my
Yes.
children. I don't want that. So I think sometimes you are a product of your environment. But
Yes. It has some level of
that
influence. Some level of
is, yeah,
influence.
yeah. But when you become an adult and a responsible person, Your environment doesn't define you. You define yourself.
Hmm. But
You
at the
have
same
to.
time, I'm gonna interject here with you.
Mm,
I am I'm a social service coordinator at a halfway house. Halfway
mm,
house. For those who do not know what a halfway house is it's a place where incarcerated men, I work with men, incarcerated men from the 2 years to their release date. Okay?
mm,
And so we look at giving them because studies have proven that there are psychosocial factors that will help them to turn over their criminogenic ways, like housing, education, a job,
right.
counseling and stuff like that. And one thing that one of our residents shared with me when we were doing an interview was that he was happy to actually first get caught, first get in prison and coming into our facility.
Program. Yeah.
Why? It was interesting because he never knew or understood that there was an alternative lifestyle of a simpler lifestyle.
Mhm.
Imagine he
Well,
has a
yeah.
job.
Yeah.
He only goes out to the job place and come back, right? Because they're
Mhm.
still incarcerated, right? But they can go to work and they can go to school and they can go to religious services. Just go and get back and come back in. And so I'm coming to saying that to your point that yes, we can. When we become an adult, then it's up to us to change that behavior, get over our experiences. But we have to be in the right place, exposed to the right resources for
Right.
us to know. Because if we are just enveloped in that same bubble of our entire life, that's all we know and that's all we see. We
Well,
don't
that's
see
true.
outside that
I
food world.
agree. Yeah, you're a product of your environment, but as long as you are in that same environment, you probably continue the same behavior.
Yeah,
Though there are people who
like
have,
the blinders on the horses
yeah,
because you're not seeing anything
yeah,
else. You do not know anything else.
yeah,
Everybody else in your network has the same experience. They do
hmm
not know beyond that.
yeah.
So
I
it
think
can
the
be
Americans
difficult.
have a term for that. They call it an echo chamber or something to that effect.
Mm. I have not heard that term before, but
Yeah,
I'm going to write it
it's
down. Put it in my
basically
phone, like taking
where
note.
you are in a is an echo chamber. It's an empty room,
Yeah, it's a bubble.
or and whatever is happening is bouncing around the same four walls.
Yes.
So it's the say it's that's essentially what it means.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have plus you have the negative reinforcement from your
Yes.
friends or the people you hang around with.
And
Um,
people want to keep you in a negative lifestyle because it
yeah,
benefits them. You
something I
know?
we always used to tell my youngest. I talk about the youngest one more because he spent more time in home with us. The older one, he was in New York and so on. But every time he leaves the house, I would tell him, make good choices. And I have told him that so much that I don't even have to complete the sentence. He finishes it whenever he's at home, or we talk on the phone. I tell him, remember to make good choices. And something I would always tell him is don't let anybody pressure you into doing anything you know that is not good for you or anything that will affect you in a negative way. If anyone tells you to do something or tries to pressure you and calls you chicken, say that's okay. I'm happy to be a chicken
Mm.
and walk away. Don't let peer pressure because I think we've all seen and know somebody who has done something. You know he's a good kid, but because of
Yes.
his friends, because he wants to impress his friends, or he wants
Mm-hmm.
to, uh, you know, it gets him, and he's the one who gets into the most trouble, and by virtue of what we look like in
Yes.
some cases, right? In this
Yes.
society we are living. So we
Mm-hmm.
always have to remind him that make good choices and don't let peer pressure make you do anything. In fact, if somebody keeps pressuring you, tell them do it first. If you
Yeah.
survive, well, I won't be there to see it because you walk away.
Right.
you don't need to be friends with them. You will, throughout your life, you will have tons of people will come and go in your life. So, don't make a permanent decision for a short-term issue.
That's
So,
good parenting, My
you
daughter
know,
has
we,
brought up a point about gentle parenting. Today I learned of a different word, all those different parenting things. But it comes up to the same thing in terms of being autocratic and to a certain level and being firm.
well, there has to be
But
balance.
yeah, it has to have a balance, being firm, being resolute in your decisions, no idle threats, explaining why, and at the
Mhm.
same time allowing your children to have a safe space to be able to come to you in times of to discuss anything.
Exactly.
Some people see
Exactly.
it as so that they put different barriers to it and labels. Gentle parenting, oh my goodness, I wish I could remember that word. But I was reading about it today, the type of parenting it was called. Like,
Um,
but
well,
why all these things? Just tell me this
because
is good
we,
parenting,
yeah, we like to label everything
label things.
as humans. We just can't look at something and say, well, this is a good way. And obviously, every family is different. All
Mm-hmm.
kids are different. Every parent is different. What will work on
So
my
one.
kids may not work on yours. So,
What will work on kid number one will definitely not work on kid number two and the last
exactly.
one.
Even in the same house, right?
Live in the same
So,
house.
we have to, as parents, we have to understand that and adjust our parenting style depending on the child.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I remember when I was in elementary school, one of my uncles used to be the principal. And one day he came into a class and um, he was teaching the class. He was filling in for the teacher who wasn't there. And everybody was rowdy, talking loud and whatever, whatever. So he came to the class and he asked everyone to be quiet. Some people sat down and stopped talking, others continued talking and ignoring him. So back then, there was spanking in school, obviously. So
The wooden ruler or the belt, which one he used?
I believe he had a ruler. So two guys, they kept on talking, and those were bad boys, right? They were just, teacher couldn't do anything with them, and they would just do whatever they wanted. And so he brought them to the front of the class and he spanked them. But guess what? They never cried. So he said, people, I can't remember exactly what he said, but he said, people, when you hit them or you give them booty and they no tears or they crying and no tears coming down their eyes,
The
they're
wicked.
wicked.
That's a cultural thing again.
Exactly. He said, wicked people when they're crying, you don't see tears coming down from their eyes. So it doesn't. Now, guess what? The rest of the class was quiet
Mm-hmm.
because they did not want to get spanked.
Right.
And you can break that down to the family unit,
Mm-hmm.
right? Some kids get spanking and there's no correction of behavior. Some kids you don't even have to spank them. You just put them in a corner for a few minutes, or you isolate them for a few minutes. I'm not telling you all that is how to parent. I am just saying those are some of the things people do or have done, and it doesn't work on every kid.
Timeout doesn't work on every kid. Let me tell you
Yeah.
now, I have a second child. You put her on a timeout, she's gonna find something in that corner to get her occupied. You take away something from her for discipline, and she will say, but as a parent, you have to learn your children.
Hmm.
Beginning to say, okay, so how long am I gonna stay without it? Okay, you're gonna stay without it for 5 days. This child would block it out of her mind for the 5 days, and on the sixth day, she's gonna say, okay, 5 days passed. Can I have my stuff, please?
Of course.
Did it work or did it not? It didn't work. So what I started to do now, if I had to take something away, I would not tell her the length of time.
Hmm.
that was where the real discipline and the real change of behavior came in. We have to be able now to learn how we're going to change behaviors, how we're going to change mindsets, what is going to be positive reinforcement as opposed to just punishment, because there's a difference
Yeah.
between punishing and discipline.
Yeah.
With
Definitely.
discipline, our hope is that we get changed behavior, but before it was punishment. You hope you're gonna get changed behavior, but children used to get so used to the punishment. Just take
Hmm.
the punishment, don't cry, and move on.
Exactly. Exactly.
Just
Yeah,
move
they get
on.
punished so many times,
It doesn't bother
nothing
you.
changes. But what do you say to people who, some people you say, well, this person will never change. I mean, how do you even
Change.
begin to break? They basically create a shell around themselves, and for whatever reason,
Well,
and
that
they've
is
decided this is how they are going to live their lives. They don't care about the consequences. How do you get those people to change their behavior, even if, especially if they already made up their mind that, well, one or two things, especially the field you work in,
well
I'm sure you've
today.
encountered people with that attitude.
Today, my supervisor and I are having that same conversation with regards to different mindset at different phases in our lives. And then it also bounces off what we just spoke about being in the echo chamber,
Mm-hmm.
because I find that different age groups, the younger people are less prone to change mindsets because they think that they still have time. Because
Mm-hmm.
remember, they're coming from an environment where a lot of their older people are still wrapped up in a criminal environment.
Right.
So they believe at 22, I can go back to prison one more time. My father is 45 and he just come out and he doing okay. But he's not doing okay. Coming back to what? And then you find the older ones, mostly 40s up, or maybe even not 40s up, maybe some who already had 3 or 4 times stint in prison. They realize now their children are growing up, they're getting old, it's time to make a change. My question to them always is it because you're getting old? If you were not getting old, would you allow yourself to change that mindset? You know, but it
Mm-hmm.
has so much more factors about how do we get people to change. Some people put on a facade of being hard, we could say hard to get. But we really have a soft, it's like a turtle. Underneath that hard tortoise shell is very soft flesh,
Yeah,
right?
sometimes
And
it's
people
more
have been
of
protecting, right?
a
These are
defense mechanism.
abusers, right? These are people who are protecting themselves because they probably haven't been exposed to a lot of abuse
Hmm.
in whatever form it is, and they have to put on this facade that they don't care. But as
Yeah.
long everybody has a weak spot, we as people just need to learn how to be sympathetic or empathetic, whichever one that is relevant at that particular point in time, and
Hmm.
we can reach people. But at the same time, we have to realize if a person is not ready for change, nothing you can do will make them change. Nothing you
That is
do,
true.
nothing you
Yeah.
say, nothing you do to them is they have to be receptive to, even though it's a little bit, that little seed. Sometimes a
Yeah.
seed is planted 10, 20 years before and it stays there ungerminated. And it
Yeah.
just has to get the right nutrients for it to start budding.
Hmm.
And that is the same thing in people. They a little seed could have been planted, they heard something from someone how many years ago, but the right environment, the right people, the right word could
The
be
right
just
time, the
one
right
thing,
conditions. Yeah.
the right conditions. I could think, come in and talk to you and say, oh, I got through to you. No, a seed was planted before, or over a couple of years, different things broke down that exterior or that
Hmm.
external shell, slowly like peeling a banana, a little peel at a time, one peel at a time, one peel at a time. It doesn't. We cannot just unpeel the whole banana at one time. Not even when we're doing the green banana. We must
Yeah,
slice and then peel it.
yeah,
You know what I mean?
hmm
So it's layers, especially
yeah,
people who are very, very deeply embroiled in an environment of crime or things like that. It takes time. And we can be very judgmental if we do not understand that level and how deep those societal factors are rooted in people.
yeah. That's another thing too. I think a lot of times we are quite judgmental of our peers or young people. We can be very harsh on them. We can say, you know, look at what this person is doing. Look at what, I'll use some Dominican lingo. We'll say, look at what Mamselle doing.
Mm,
She's this, that, or the other. Or look at what Mr. doing. Not realizing that this person been, may have survived a situation that
mhm.
you would hope yourself never found yourself in. But
Right.
you don't know. And we're saying, well, we almost want to take a belt and hit the person or punish them because they're doing something we disagree with. It may be
Oh,
dangerous to themselves, but
right.
it doesn't necessarily mean they are doing it just because they want to. That may not be the lifestyle that they want. That may not be what they want for themselves, but they may
Mhm.
have been thrown into that situation. And
Yes,
certain situations people can't get out on their own.
that's
And
right.
I think that rather than judging a person, rather than condemning a person, because we are not supposed to do that, we are not supposed to judge and condemn people because we have our own issues to deal with and to answer for, rather than worrying about what someone else is doing.
And
So,
I'm going to take you on that note and also relate it to a biblical thing where Jesus said, "He who has not seen through the first stone." And on that
exactly.
note, we're going to leave where I am, and reflecting our own mind shifts in terms of our culture, in terms of our young people, and take a break. Let's get to our sponsors, and we will be right back.
We'll be right back. All right.
Get ready for an electrifying thriller. A fearless New York attorney takes on corrupt corporate giants fighting for the powerless. Can this seasoned attorney and his team take down a monstrous company and its powerful leader? What will be the final verdict? What price will our heroes pay? Find out as you turn the pages of The Trust by Sam George. Get your copy of The Trust today from Amazon.com. A smart house run by a vengeful AI, a mute witness to an act of unspeakable evil. A breadfruit thief is haunted. A young man unwittingly creates a god. Giant crapos terrorize a community. A witch seeks revenge on her neighbors, and much more. The Piton Noir Writing Collective is thrilled to announce the release of the third book in their acclaimed anthology series, The Flying Crapo. Flying Crapo, Heroes and Monsters. Now available for purchase on Amazon.com. Get your copy today and embark on a journey filled with heroes, monsters, and the magic of the Caribbean.
Monsters and magic of the Caribbean.
We have those two, We
We
just
have
call them
those
Lugawa. We just call
too.
them
Yeah,
Sukuyan.
of course, this Sukuya and my grandfather used to give us stories. Let me tell you, when he come back from the garden, all those lights and stuff he used to encounter on his way home. Those things are real, Let me tell you something.
Oh, yeah.
If you believe in good, evil exists,
Definitely.
and we have
Yeah,
to be
we have two
mindful of
worlds.
that.
We have the physical world and the spiritual world.
Yes, and
And
we
not
will.
believing in the spiritual world is pure foolishness, you
Yes.
know.
Mm-hmm.
So you can choose not to believe in Yahweh or Jehovah if you want to, but just know that the demons watching you too.
And they know their Bible too. Don't think they do not know because they know how to get us.
Their father knew, the father was in the midst of it.
Exactly.
Their father knows it, knows the word, knows the truth.
let us segue off a little bit there. Let me prick your mind. So all these things, drawings they show of demons, and the devil have these big horns and this grotesque face. He was the most beautiful angel
Well, that is man's.
to make evil look bad. Evil doesn't look bad.
No, no,
Evil
that
looks
is not.
just
Yeah,
as
that's
beautiful.
first of all, no one has ever seen the devil. So how do you draw something you've never seen? He's spirit. He is. He's evil. He's an
You
evil
think?
spirit. He can't
You
read your
think?
mind. He can't, but he can influence you. He can place things in on your heart. When temptation, for example, if you go into someone's house and you see they have a nice, beautiful vase there, and you decide, boy, I like that vase. I can take it and put it in my purse. I don't know if a vase can fit in a purse, but the point is that's temptation.
Yes, yes.
If you take it, that's stealing.
Mhm.
But so the crime is not the temptation. The crime is following through.
That's
Is
right.
the temptation. Is acting upon it.
Mhm. And
So
sorry,
no,
go
go
ahead.
ahead, go ahead.
I was gonna take that now to place it on young people because a lot of young people do not believe that there is such a thing as evil, or because there
Mm.
is a real bloodline between spirituality, and there are so many things that's coming into play now in competing for young people's
Attention, yeah.
attention and spirituality and things like that. There is so much confusion and frustration and
And I
chaos
think
in there.
that's one of the reasons, one of the causes of that is the way religion has been administered or has been put on the world. I think this is one of the causes of the issue that we are having, where people find it difficult separating religion from spirituality,
Mm-hmm.
and those are two completely separate
Two
things,
completely different things. Yes,
right? And they have different goals,
right,
right? Because let's take, for example, some of the cults, the religious quote unquote cults. They have a different goal. Their goal is to be worshipped
right.
by their followers.
Mm-hmm.
Their goal is to pretend to be something they are not, which is
Right. Mm-hmm.
blaspheme against the Holy Spirit. Say they are God, or they are God on earth, or whatever the case may be. So all of that, when you're dealing with religious cults, and then you're also dealing with religious churches who say something completely different, but act differently from what they say or what they teach, and not teaching all of the word, but teaching some of the word, the parts that sound nice, quote unquote nice, and the parts that leaving out the parts of consequence. Because in secular life, we tell people every choice you make has a consequence.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So why would the same thing not apply to your spiritual life?
Right.
The world is four. There are four sides to the world, not two sides of a coin. It's four sides to the world.
Tell me, what's the
The
others?
physical side has two sides. The spiritual side has two sides. So that's four sides in the world.
Oh, okay, okay, okay. I get
Yeah,
you. I get you. Yes,
yeah.
yes. Uh-huh.
So I tell you, I'm weird. My philosophy
No,
is
no,
different.
it's just about a different perspective and
Yeah, I
understanding
mean,
it. That is
yeah.
why
I
people
just
change
I just
every
use
day.
that to how you call it animate what I am trying to say.
Yeah.
You know, so every choice we make, whether the choice, if it's a good choice, or you could say you reap what you sow.
Right. Right.
That's another way of putting it. That's a
Mm-hmm.
cliche-ish way of putting it, but it is the same thing.
And that's why we have a lot of young people also pushing back up against spirituality. I myself, I stepped away from religiosity a couple years ago. Um, yeah, I stood up in a church and told a reverend something after he made his point about a gospel. I asked him to clarify, and then I confronted it.
Mm.
and then he still, people want to, whichever religion you belong to, whoever the prophet is in, the basic um rule is the rule of love.
Yeah.
And then the next thing is forgiveness.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next thing is inclusion.
Yeah.
Who was Jesus embracing in his circle? He said, I didn't come for the saved. Then what good that will be? But
Yeah.
then if you isolate me because I don't live up to a perfect biblical picture, who is going to carry the kingdom?
Well, it says that in the word, who is going to teach them? And, if they're not sent, who is going to be the teachers? Somebody has to learn it, and someone has to teach it, and someone has to encourage, and all of that.
But
Because
then there
none of
also
us
has to
can,
be testimonies,
yeah,
regardless of
none of
what.
us can live in isolation.
Right. And there will always
And
be testimonies of people changing from one way of life to the other. And
yeah,
when our young people see so much of our religious people isolate them and ridicule them and judge them and put them down and demean them, what values are we inculcating within them to make them follow a different path? We're not, my children corrected me on something I say. I said it wrongly the other day, but I have it correct. There is no hate like Christian love. Well, if we look and listen, that is what the young people are saying. There
yeah,
is no hate like Christian love. So for a Christian to say I love you is about chastising you, demeaning you, judging you, labeling you because you're not like them.
yeah.
Like
Well,
what is the Samaritan and what is the one where one went up to pray, the Pharisee and the Good Samaritan. And
mhm.
it was a Samaritan when he
Well,
went
it
on the
was the
back
Good
of the church.
Samaritan. I know what you're trying to say. The story of the
No,
Good
there's a Good
Samaritan.
Samaritan
A priest
and met the
passed
guy
by,
on
a
the road,
Levite
and
passed
then
by.
there's the one about the Pharisee who was up front praying, and then the man at the back of the church who was bending his head in prayer and being humble.
Yeah,
And then the parable was the one at the back was a better person because he
yeah.
was
That's in
humble.
Matthew. That's in Matthew. Basically, what Christ was talking about is he was warning people when you are praying, it's better to do it quietly or to
Mm-hmm.
yourself. Don't be using vain words and all your so educated words.
Also arrogant. It also points
Yeah,
out about the level of arrogance because you think you're such at a level of spirituality, you're better than other people.
yeah. But that's what he was saying. So basically, the disciples asked him which one would, I don't remember, which one would be considered right. So he said, well, basically, Christ said, not the one who was praying out loud for everyone to hear and for man to praise them. It means that
Close
they
your
already
door
have
and
the
go in your
reward.
room and pray.
Yeah, that's the Bible actually says to go into your closet and pray
Mm-hmm.
because
Yeah.
it's prayer is a spiritual conversation between you
Mm-hmm.
and the Heavenly Father. So it's not about impressing
Right.
the person next to you. It's not about that.
And,
But
mhm.
I think you have you made a point that's important that young people are really confused because religion teaches one thing but does something else, does the opposite in some cases of what it teaches. Tells young people don't go partying, don't go clubbing, dress properly, dress with a cover up your whole body. But we all know what happened or what happens. You know, all you have
Mm.
to do is pull up any crime charged to a
Yes.
religious person, and you
Mm-hmm.
will see
Yeah.
what they're preaching the opposite of what they're doing, and that
Right.
has been happening for so long
Right.
that the young people these days are just tuned out in some
Right.
cases. Unless they've seen they've seen the, I don't want to say the right way, because none of us really know exactly which is the right way. We can only do what we can do as humans. We can only try our best. But unless they have some very good examples, namely at home,
Mm-hmm.
it's almost impossible for them to even, that's why they don't believe. That's why they are confused. That's why they don't know what to do. They're not sure what to believe. They're
Mm-hmm.
not sure
Mm-hmm.
what is and what isn't.
Right.
So it's coming back to how we raise our children, you know? And so we have to make them understand that we are not perfect. We are human beings. We make mistakes. Your parents are not always right, although I
That's
tell my son all the time, I'm always right. Even when I'm wrong, I'm always right.
right.
Oh,
So
that
how do you
gets him
teach them
mad.
humility though?
When he was younger, he used to get very mad at me for saying that. Now he just looks at me and shakes his head. And then or he'll say, "No, Dad, no, no, you're not right when you're wrong."
I'm the boss. I'm the boss. Look, go to the boss is always right. If the boss is
Exactly,
wrong, go back to rule number one. I'm the boss. The boss
exactly,
is always right. It's a loop.
exactly.
Yeah.
But I mean, nowadays I do that in jest, just to mostly teasing. But the
Yeah.
fact remains, this is how young people and children rarely do what we tell them to do. They do what they see us do.
Children
They
live what they
follow our
learn.
example.
And we think
So
children are so insightful and they pick up so quickly. We will think we're telling our children one thing, then they know the real the truth, you know.
yeah, you can't lie to them anymore. We
No.
can't lie to them. We have to tell them the truth because
I like the way you say anymore.
yeah, we can't lie to them anymore. I mean, especially these days, all they have to do is pull up their phone and use an AI model to, you know, they just have to ask AI.
Mm-hmm.
AI, is Santa real? That's,
I know.
so we can't lie to them anymore and expect them to, one, follow what we tell them to do, two, respect us, right? We just cannot. Maybe even 20 years ago, you could get away with certain things, but we can't get
Mhm.
away with these things nowadays. And then they grow up looking at you
Yeah.
as a liar, as
Mm-hmm.
someone they cannot trust.
Trust, which
And
defeats the purpose of
you
what
don't
we're
want to
trying.
lose the trust of your children. If you
That's
if
right.
you lose the trust of our kids, that creates a further divide. That creates even
Mm-hmm.
more problems.
Yes. Because they'll go find the answer somewhere else that you wouldn't want them to go find it.
They might find the wrong answers in the wrong place.
Most times that's what happens.
And that's exactly. My my grandmother, my maternal grandmother, had something she used to say: "Mauvais kai toujours ka kuye ou," or "Lewa bon kai, mauvais kai toujours ka kuye ou." For those who don't understand part of that, well, it means when you're in a good place, trouble always calling you. And her reason for saying that was a warning to her children and her grandchildren that be careful.
Mm-hmm.
Be
That's
careful
so
the
true.
road and the path you take because you might find trouble rather than good things.
Mm-hmm.
So it's, you know,
It's such a, like the swing bridges that lie you, where you have to walk
yeah,
over the swing bridge and you're
yeah,
walking and it's swinging with you and you have to hold the side because you're afraid it's going to throw you down.
right.
It is so much like that with our children because one step is not necessarily dictating what the other step is going to be. Sometimes they're both just so different. I don't know if I'm saying what I want to say, if I'm just confusing everybody, but As parents, and our parents told us that parenting doesn't come with a handbook. So
Nope.
sometimes we're like this, we're trying to juggle and trying to figure out what's the balance? Where do we get our balance? What is the balance with this child? What's the balance with that child? While we are also finding ourselves, because we never stop finding who we are. We are always growing, we are always changing,
Always learning.
always learning. Who I was this yesterday is not who I am today, because I learned
Mhm.
something today that changed my mindset or changed an opinion I most likely had yesterday. No, that
Yeah.
is growth. So who I was
That's
yesterday,
how it
I
should
no
be.
longer am today.
Yeah.
I'm
That's how it should
always
be.
evolving.
Yeah.
You
I
know,
remember growing up hearing older people telling children they shouldn't, preventing children from speaking, telling them things like children should be seen and not
and I
heard,
heard it.
these kinds of things. And I have never believed that. And I have always
Right.
said that I would never treat my children that way. I would always, I want to hear what they have to say.
To say, because they are people too, and they have a
Yeah.
voice, and they
Yeah.
have opinions, and they have ideas.
Well, not even, I didn't even consider it that far. I was just thinking that you want your children to tell you what they're thinking because
Mhm.
they might be getting hurt. They might be in some kind of trouble,
Situation.
so,
Yes.
situation. Somebody might be bullying them, and you
Mm-hmm.
want them to be able to talk to you. You want them to
Right.
tell you these things because if they don't, you
Mm-hmm.
never know when it's going to explode into something worse.
Right.
So you always want to listen to what they have to say and you give
Mm-hmm.
them time to speak. You let them
That's
say what
right.
they need to say and you respond accordingly.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
if we don't learn these things, and that is not making your children think like they are adults, you know, um, when they are not. That is that is treating them with respect.
Correct.
Just as
That's right.
you expect them to respect you, you have to also
Mm-hmm.
respect them as
That's
fellow
right.
human beings.
Exactly.
And
Very much so.
sometimes it gets a little frustrating to see the way some people have deal with their own children. You know, you
Mm-hmm.
see them in the supermarkets, or you're seeing them where the children are so out of control in the store, out in public. I'm not saying to judge them, but what I'm saying is you can tell by that what is happening at home. So
Yeah. And
you have to
again,
find the right balance.
you have to find the right balance, and about also is putting yourself in a space to learn,
Yeah.
develop, to teach yourself in the absence. There is no excuse that my mother didn't teach me that. You as long as you are in the capacity to say, my mother did not teach me that, means that you are in the same capacity to go find it for yourself.
Yeah.
Because you are now acknowledging a certain level of awareness of not knowing, a certain level of awareness that you
Hmm.
can still, you could have done better. Now, if our parents did the best they could, and if we say, well, my parents didn't teach me better, then so you're going, now that you're aware your parents didn't teach you better, don't you want to know better or do better or do different?
Well, and that's the thing. That's the thing too, right? Some people want to remain in their ignorance. Quite to be quite frank, some
Mm-hmm.
people want to perpetrate the same way they were brought up. You know, it's like this. To use a political example, often we hear people say, "Well, my parents and grandparents were Labor or Freedom or UWP or Republican or Democrat. That's what I am.
And that's
That's
where
what
you're going
I'll
to
guide in
stay.
that.
Mm.
That's where I'll stay." To me, that is a deep, deep level of ignorance because the party your parents, political party your parents and grandparents may have supported,
It's not
certainly
the
is not the
party.
one that exists right now
That's
in
right.
whichever country you are.
Mm-hmm.
Because these are different people. They may have the same titles, the same name,
Right.
but their philosophies, their political leanings, their you know
Personalities.
their personalities, everything about them
Mm-hmm.
may be completely different.
Right.
Even if they were trained by the same set of people your parents supported,
Yes,
but everyone has a mind of their own,
that's
and
correct.
everyone makes decisions based on what is better for them.
That's
So
correct.
you can't say just because your parents supported a particular party or a particular religion that
Mm-hmm.
this is where you are going to spend the rest of your days.
That's
You got to
correct.
make your own decisions, right?
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, you have to inform yourself on, you know,
Yeah, we need to, and I say inform yourself. We shouldn't just limit ourselves to a little blinders. We live in an environment, but we shouldn't keep ourselves in a cocoon. The
hmm
butterfly metaphor metamorphosizes in the cocoon, but then it spreads its wings into a beautiful butterfly and it goes out seeing the world and getting different flowers and doing its pollination and doing what it has to do. So too that
hmm
we should spread our wings, find out what's going on in the world around us, find what's happening to the young people around us, even though it's one person at a time. Maybe we
right.
can even adopt one young person
Mhm.
as a mentor. Be a mentor to at least one young person around us in our circle.
Yeah, you said that last week, was it? And I
Yes.
thought that it to be quite an interesting concept.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of, well, mentors are always older folks who've gone through some things and they find a
Yes.
younger person who is headed down the same path to
Mm-hmm.
mentor, or even just to help them make the right decisions as they
Yes.
grow up. But putting it the other way around,
Mm-hmm.
asking a young person to be the
To,
mentor to an older person, that's a
mm-hmm.
very interesting concept. And
But I'm not gonna take credit for that. That was my nephew. That was his one of his wise words to us adults.
mm,
Find
right,
someone, and
right,
maybe you can
yeah,
use one of those part of that to make a short, a reel, to emphasize that it doesn't. We learn the same from them as just as much as they
oh
learn
yeah,
from us.
yeah. The young folks
There is
have
so
just as
much
much to teach us as
richness
we
in the
have to
young
teach them.
people. And as we're talking about the shifting in global culture, I can see that shifting when I'm talking about shifting, like when there's an earthquake and the soil, the land is moving.
hmm
I see that that's where right now we are in this world. You spoke earlier that the political aspect and the religious aspect and spiritual aspect are all a bit different. But with where the political scene is right now, I see the whole world is trying to find its footing as to where do we belong?
hmm
Where exactly are we at in our traditions, in our values, in where we hold our young people, where we hold our older people, our elderly? What values are we placing in this whole big bowl, this bouillon, I should say, this whole big thing?
Yeah,
And what do we pull out of it? Um, what is the reality? Because reality can be relative for everybody.
exactly.
You
Sometimes it's
know,
perception. Yeah.
it's perception. But we have to find some common ground for us to be able to leap forward in some different ways. We'll never find everything will never be the same, but there has to be some commonality that we can spring forward in terms of embracing our young people, embracing ourselves, our own youthfulness, to be able to identify with them. I don't know if they want to identify with us, but
Mhm.
to identify in some way where we can, even though we cannot identify, but we can work together in making this world a better place for us and for them.
Yeah, I think you're right. That's important. I mean, looking at our politicians today, and the way the world politics is shifting. I'm often concerned about, well, what is my younger son and or his children? What would what will the world look like by then, by that time? You know, what kind of world will our younger generation inherit? What kind of world will we leave them? Are we going to leave them a world that is full of chaos and death and gloominess and destruction? Is that what we're going to leave for them, or are we going to
Mm-hmm.
leave them saddled with debt, saddled with student debt? I mean, as you know, there are people who've basically retired, almost ready to retire, and they still have student loans to pay.
Yeah.
So, is that the kind of world we are going to leave to our children? I want to go back to something that we had spoken about earlier. A point I wanted to make about AI. One of the things that when AI first burst onto the public scene, I like to put it that way because it's been around for a while, but
Mm-hmm.
one of the things AI was doing is it was allowing people to access certain documents from universities in terms of like dissertations and stuff like that from PhD students or graduate students. Some universities attempted to block it, right? Saying, "Oh, you can't use our whatever." So the AI, but the point is, I was talking to a graduate student earlier today, and she was telling me that now her particular university was one of those universities that basically freaked out and was so scared of AI that they blocked AI from using any of the material and so forth. But now, so the professors were like, well, there's no way we're going to accept anything done with, by, or supported by AI. But the library at her school had a different attitude
Mm-hmm.
because they recognize those AI tools as a way to help them do their work more efficiently,
Mm-hmm.
help them
Mm-hmm.
curate documents, some
Mm-hmm.
documents they've been trying to organize and
Mm-hmm.
digitize, and with the help of AI tools, they were able to, do a good portion of that work that would take them the next 40 years to do.
Right, right, right. Mm-hmm.
And now those professors, some professors are
On board.
realize
Mm-hmm.
how much of a awesome tool this is.
Right.
So my point is that sometimes we see things and we see situations develop and we are afraid of it because we don't understand it,
Right. Very much so.
and we can't allow that to drive us.
Mm-hmm.
We have to be willing to understand how the world is changing, how the world
That's right.
has changed, because it
Mm-hmm.
has changed you know from the dark ages. The world has changed to now. So
Right.
we have to try to understand what is happening around us
Mm-hmm.
if we want to relate to our children of 2024.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, we are going to be left behind. We'll be truly left behind, and we'll be
Mm-hmm.
just floating in the ethos somewhere and not sure which direction to go.
And that gap between us, that divide will be so huge.
Yeah.
There will be no spring bridge. Not even the Chinese glass bridges will be able. The Chinese are created in developing their bridges over these huge abysses.
Yes.
Not our divide will be so huge. Not even the Chinese will be able to help us with that.
Bridge the gap. Yeah.
To bridge the gap, because we have to be intentional and purposeful with our interactions and our engagements with young people. And yes, as we see that you're watching the youth effect, I'm Kathy Robinson with the handsome Sam George, or author Sam George as well. Very creative young man. Young man. I have to emphasize that.
Yes.
My youth of the day. And remember, you can get us on TDN Media and TDN Network, on Facebook, on Instagram, on YouTube, on Roku. All right. So TDN ENT or TDN Radio Caribbean on Facebook, youtube.com/TDN Network 1 on YouTube, and these streams on TDN TV 24. Remember, TDN, you can also listen on tdnradio.net, CBE Radio in Toronto, and on Instagram, TDN Radio Caribbean. All right. And as well, please remember to send me your info, your comments at the youtheffect767@gmail.com. Don't be shy. At the same time, we are open to listening and having your comments. But remember, the first thing is to be respectful. Respectful people. Thank you. This is so much, just as much as your program as it is us. So we want to also hear your voice so we can know what you are looking forward in upcoming episodes of the Youth
Mhm.
Effect. And since we are coming down to the hour, Mr. George, like I ask all my guests, what are 3 pointers or suggestions you will give young people? Oh,
First of all, honor your
mhm.
mother and father.
Yes.
We're going spiritual now. But yes, I mean, that's serious. Certainly be respectful of your elders. I don't know if that is true, but I just think that a lot of times we see too much disrespect in the society. Young people, they will, um, not saying you have to bow to anyone. However, if you walk into a room and there are elders in the room, you greet them. You don't just, walk in and do whatever it is you're doing and walk out. So I would say be respectful all around, both to your elders and to yourselves and to your peers.
That's 2. What's number
That's
3?
two. Okay. Well, yeah. Look for positive influences in your life.
Mhm.
I think that is also important. Look for mentors as well. So maybe that's 3 or 4, but certainly um, mentorship is important.
Mhm.
Um, be leaders.
Mhm.
We can't all be leaders, but strive to be a leader. So you are not finding yourself always following the wrong path. So if you're a leader, then maybe you can influence. Well, we can all be leaders because there's always someone looking up to us,
Mhm.
whether that's a younger brother or sister, sibling, or
Mhm.
whatever the
Mhm.
case may be. Someone is always looking up to you. So we can all be leaders. I
Yes.
think I just realized that that we can all be leaders
In one way or the other.
in one way or the other.
Yes.
Mhm.
And 3,
For adults,
our
well,
for us adults, older persons.
I would say one, always try to be the adult, especially when interacting with young people. Be the adult. Some people, sometimes we can find ourselves trying to be on the same level with a young person for whatever reason. You might get into an argument with a young person, but there's no need for that. Always try to be the adult. Always try to be the one leading, leading them down the right path. So yeah, always try to be the adult. That would be my advice for myself and others and the rest of us. Um, Also, it comes back to vice versa mentorship. Find a young person, like you said it earlier, adopt a young person, especially if you don't have young children, if you know, your children have gone off to college or whatever the case may be. Find a young person to teach or help them learn your trade or whatever it is you do,
Or teach
whatever
you.
knowledge.
Or teach you.
Well, yeah, yeah. That's what I'm saying. I said
Mhm.
both.
Yes, yes, both
Young
ways.
people find someone to mentor. Older folks find someone to mentor as well.
Right, right, right. He
So
did say
I
yes.
think because we can learn from one another,
Yes.
regardless. I don't believe that I can't learn from a young person. I learn from young people all the time. You know,
3.
so we got to learn those things. We have to. Patience is also important. Be patient. So that's my third one for us as older people, older adults. Be patient with the young people. Sometimes they don't know better. Sometimes it's our fault. We didn't teach them. Or sometimes they didn't have anyone to teach them.
That's right.
So, you know, try to be less judgmental.
But don't be so
That's what I think.
hasty. You did well. You're a
I
great
hope so.
guest.
Oh, well, I'm going to steal a fourth one.
Yes,
Make sure you buy your copy of The Trust.
the trust.
One.
You just advertising yourself on my program without asking my
And
personal
two, make
permission.
sure you buy yourself a copy of The Flying Craft. Well,
Yes.
here's the fourth one.
Yes.
Read.
Read.
Reading
Educate
is
yourself.
still fundamental.
Yes.
It is still fundamental.
It's still
You
fundamental.
got to remember that. So I just added a fourth one.
Wasn't that an advertisement while we were growing up? Reading is fundamental.
Well, they rang that in our heads at school.
Yes, I as you said that, yes, I
Everywhere.
remember that. Reading is fundamental. Yes,
Yeah.
definitely.
That's
And
why I
it
say
still is.
still. It's still fundamental.
You
It's
know, they
still
say the best way to get a black person is to put something in writing.
put something in writing.
We have to change that mode
And
of
I
thinking.
found that
Yes.
find that to be such an insult.
It is an insult, but is it not true though?
It may be true, but
Because
the thing is,
we do not like to read. We are not a reading people.
I know. But so what I'm saying is, they also used to say, "Me puika corriger."
It doesn't.
Do you understand, Patwa?
Yeah, I understand. I just cannot say it.
Okay.
But it doesn't, you know. Nowadays they say sticks and bones can break my bones, but words don't do me no harm.
Well,
But
so that's a contradiction, right? We
words
used to say
can
that.
really break you more
Yeah,
than sticks and stones.
yeah. That's something I never believed. I always say that. Words are more dangerous than your bones breaking because broken bones can heal. But your reputation being destroyed, it's almost impossible to get that back.
Words that have been sent forward can never be taken back.
Yeah.
And that's also why we have to be intentional with what you said earlier of how we speak and prophesy over our young people.
Right.
Because these words are going to mold them. This very same thing I tell people about naming your children. Names have power. These are the names that are going to define who they are.
Yeah.
You know, so in naming your children, be intentional about the definition of those names.
Yeah.
And be intentional about the things that we let out of our mouth to our kids, to our grandchildren, to our employees, our colleagues, our peers. Words, there is life and death definitely in the tongue. There is power in the tongue, and we have to know what power we hold within ourselves and to be able to manage that and to control that.
Yeah, we have to be careful not to speak curses on our children.
Yes.
Sometimes people do that even if it's unintentional.
Because it's so natural. You said something earlier when we were talking about our people. We do not know how to compliment anybody unless if it is in the negative.
Yeah.
We see somebody walking down the road and they may be looking really pretty, but we do not know how to tell them, say, you ugly, look at you, how you dress. We just do not know how to tell them they're looking nice, you know.
Yeah.
Or they look good. Oh, you put on weight, man. You're fat like a... No.
Yeah.
No.
I think I saw someone post something like that earlier today. I didn't read the whole thing, but they were saying, stop telling people when
they're fat.
They put on weight or they're fat.
Yes. And that's the first thing that people always say to somebody. Either they lose weight or they put... Let me tell you now, you go down the same road in the same afternoon within a matter of 5 minutes. 10 people tell you put on weight and another 10 tell you lose weight, you know. So that is why we have to know who we are as our own individual selves
Hmm.
and not be influenced or look for validation or approval or for permission from people outside of that,
We didn't
outside
really
of
touch on
ourselves.
it, but self-esteem is a very important thing.
Yes, and that is how we teach our children to have self-esteem, by the way we breathe life into them through our
Yeah.
tongue. And as we say good night, we leave that word to you in terms of how our cultures is shifting with regards to our young people. What doesn't change and what doesn't shift is our engagement with the younger people in helping mold them into being influential and successful people in our society. Successful not necessarily meaning a lot of money, but a successful person in terms of ethically and morally in tuned with themselves and with their spirit to be upright citizens of a social and a global culture. And Mr. George, let me say thank you so much for helping share in this conversation and opening up to a lot of things that help me as well as an individual to figure out where am I in
Hmm.
terms of how I relate to the younger people, if I'm open enough, or where I can make the adjustments in being a better person and creating a safe space for other young people who I will end up meeting on my journey. So thank you once again. I appreciate you. I appreciate the work you all are doing on TDN. And same place, same time, God willing, next week.
All right. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it, and we can all learn from one another. So,
Yes, and remember you're looking at the youth effect. See you next week, Monday, 8:30. Bring a friend to tell a friend to tell a friend to tell a friend. We are here for you in terms of being the conduit to encourage, to motivate, to empower, and advocate for our young people. We are just the conduit and help them to bring forth their voice in extending their expression, in creating the world in which they live in, making it easier for us. It's not our world, it's their world. So let us be one in that and be harmonious in the way we go about in embracing our young people and the culture which they are now creating in a world that we're going to live in and go forward. Have a good night. Have a wonderful and productive week. And see you next week, Monday, same place, same time on the Youth Effect. Good night.
They gon' hear us roar. They gon' hear us roar.